Alrighty, so welcome to the first lesson of this course. And in this lesson, what I want to do is compare kind of the first two guitars that people normally choose from when they're starting to play. So the first one that I see a lot of students coming to me with as total beginners is what's called a classical guitar. Okay, so normally with the classical guitar, you sit like this. You have to really be careful about your posture. And these are the kind of guitars that really classical musicians that study music and play classical music play. So a classical guitarist will play one of these guitars. So the other kind of typical guitar that you will normally hear on the radio is this one. So this one is called a Western guitar. And the difference between these two guitars is that this one has nylon strings. You can hear that. And this one has steel strings. See that? It has a much kind of a more steel sound, this one. Okay? So here's what you're going to have to kind of think about. The pros and cons of both of these guitars. So what's really nice about the classical guitar is that the neck is really nice and wide. It has a much wider neck than the Western guitar. You see that? If you just look at the neck, you can see that the classic is quite a bit wider. Maybe 1/4, 1/5 wider. Okay? So that means that it's going to be a little bit easier to grab chords without having your finger, the skin on your finger, touch the string below it and mute that note out. Okay, so that's really one of the pros of a nylon string guitar. Another pro of a nylon string guitar is that it's a little bit less painful once you start to play as a beginner. The steel strings will be a little bit more painful, and it's going to hurt a little bit more. I personally started learning with a Western guitar. I went through the pain, and I have a lot of beginner students who do the same, okay? But it's not a bad thing to start with. You can get one probably for $100. That's not that bad. And just to kind of learn your first chords, a classical guitar would actually be a pretty good choice. With that being said, of course, you can also learn with a Western guitar or with an electric guitar. So those options are really all open. Another thing that I kind of already talked about was the tone. This guitar is going to have a much different sound than the Western guitar. Anytime you hear a guitar on the radio, 99% of the time you're hearing a Western guitar. So for me, this is the sound that my ears prefer hearing. So it's really kind of a personal preference choice. Again, this one has a slightly thinner neck, so it's a little bit more tight and a little bit harder to get those notes to sound really nice and clear at the beginning. Okay, so those are kind of the big differences between a classical and a Western guitar. So you're going to have to kind of take that a little bit into consideration when choosing. One more thing about the Western guitar is that it has its 12th fret ahead of the body. Okay, so the 12th fret is here. With the classical guitar, the 12th fret is on the body. So it has a slightly shorter neck. If you want to play solos kind of higher up the neck, you're going to have an easier time with a Western guitar than you are with a classical guitar. So those are the two main differences kind of between, or the two main guitars that people normally kind of can choose from in the acoustic world. Yeah. So one other thing is that with the Western guitars, often they come with a pickup. And that means that you will be able to plug it into an amp and be able to amplify the tone. Classical guitars normally don't come with a pickup. So Western guitars, it's going to be a little bit harder to play. It's going to hurt a little bit more, but you're going to have a nicer sound. From my ears, it's a nicer sound. The classical guitar might have a nicer sound for you. So a little bit harder to play. In my opinion, a slightly nicer tone, and you're going to be able to plug it in. Okay, so those are kind of the things that you're going to have to look out for. Okay, so in the next lesson, I'm going to be talking about the difference between an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar, and whether an electric guitar could possibly also be a good starting instrument for you. Many people tell me, Henry, I'd love to start with electric guitar, but you're supposed to start with an acoustic one. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in the next lesson. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson where we're going to be comparing acoustic guitars with electric guitars. All right, see you there.